What's up, shark nerds? I'm Paul Clerkin, a shark researcher. Thank you for joining me on my channel, where I'll be talking about all things shark science. This week, we're talking about hammerheads. In 2016, I was on a commercial fishing boat, and the fishers were targeting mahi-mahi with a long line. They just put down a long line with a bunch of hooks off of it, and they would catch sharks by accident, which we call bycatch. They let me go along, just piggyback on their trip, so I could do my shark research. So they let the hooks soak overnight, and when they started coming up, there was a little bit of commotion. People said there's a shark in the water, and I could just see probably about a 5-foot scalloped hammerhead swimming back and forth on the line. So I grabbed my gear, my snorkel, my mask, my fins, and I hopped on in. And when I got down there, there was this fairly large scalloped hammerhead swimming back and forth. So I wanted to release her, which meant I had to take the hook out of her mouth. And this wound up being a lot more trouble than I thought it was going to be. They are tremendously strong sharks. I would grab her by the tail and flip her to try to put her into a catatonic state. And every time I'd flip her, I'd try to brace my hand on her head just to keep her, stable, and she would just turn. It was like an unstoppable force. It was like I was fighting a car, and there's just nothing I could do to stop her from turning. It took me a lot of tries. I got a lot of scrapes on my arms from their denticles. But eventually I was able to put her into catatonic immobility, and I popped out the hook. And I swam with her for a little bit to get some oxygen going over her gills until she started swimming on her own, and I let her go, and she dove down and swam off, and she seemed to be just fine. So there's 11 different species of hammerhead sharks, and while they all have the flat hammer-shaped head, they are actually really diverse. Some of them have relatively narrow heads, like the mallet head. Some of them have these extremely long hammers, like the wing head. Not only do hammerheads come in different shapes, but they also come in different sizes. From the great hammerhead, which reaches 20 to 22 feet long, all the way to the bonnet head, which averages just 2 or 3 feet in length. Hammerheads live in warm water in coastal areas, so you're not going to find them in Alaska, you're not going to find them at the bottom of the ocean, but pretty much any tropical area with a coastline is potential habitat for a hammerhead. What do all hammerheads have in common? That alien head. Their heads are compressed and elongated to the sides with the eyes on the furthest out bits. And this way, they can see all the way behind them and all the way to the front with just a little window in front of them where they can't see. So this is something you don't learn in books. When I was working with hammerheads, I thought it was really interesting that their heads are really flat. They're almost sharp. If they were made out of metal, you could cut your lawn with them. But they're not made out of metal. They're cartilaginous with flesh on it, and it has almost the squeezy texture of an apple. It's really firm with a little bit of give. In addition to this, they have their nostrils are along that small edge, so they actually have really long, low, hard to see nostrils. And while their eyes have stereo vision, having their nostrils out on this hammer gives them stereo smell. Because they have these stereo nostrils, they're better able to tell where the smell is coming from in space. Outer space. Is that gonna be weird for kids? I don't mean outer space, I mean like space in the water. Okay, so everybody wants to know what is the purpose of the hammerhead's head, and there's different theories on this. One very popular one is that they use it to detect prey, and this is probably true. They've studied the heads of hammerheads, and for a square inch, they have a lot more electromagnetic sensors, ampullae of Lorenzini, than other species. So they have these little pores that detect electromagnetic pulses, and they use it to find their prey. And because they have so many in there, we think that they use their head like a metal detector. So that is probably true. Another hypothesis is that their heads act as a hydrofoil, like a set of wings. Pectoral fins for most sharks is their primary set of wings, and since hammerheads have another set of wings, this helps them save energy in the water. Great hammerheads have really large dorsal fins, and we've seen them swim sideways. They kind of swim at an angle a lot, and what happens is they have their dorsal fin and their hammerhead, and when they turn sideways, this helps them just glide through the water and save energy. Yet another hypothesis is that their flatheads help them turn quicker in the water. This makes sense because since their heads are flat and blade-like, they can turn through the water with less resistance, and they've actually done studies where they watch hammerheads and they seem to turn more often than other species, and they turn faster than other species. The final hypothesis, and this one's really interesting, is that they use their heads to hunt. So great hammerheads love eating rays, and they will swim along the bottom and they'll use their head to pin a ray in place so it can't go anywhere, and they'll bite off one of the ray's wings and they'll swivel on their head while holding the ray in place to bite off the other wing so they can't swim anywhere. The last thing we have to talk about is hammerhead attacks. Do you know how many unprovoked hammerhead attacks there were on humans since 1580? 17. 17 total. Do you know how many of those were fatal? 0. None of them. So hammerheads almost never attack humans, and they're actually very bashful and shy around humans. Scuba divers love the opportunity to get in the water and dive with hammerheads, but they almost always swim off as soon as people get in the water. So a lot of the fear of hammerheads is very much misplaced. Alright, shark nerds, that was our episode for hammerheads. Please let me know your favorite hammerhead facts, comment below, and like and subscribe so together we can make Shark Week every week.